How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today on September 21 with Stephen Swatton, the CEO of CopperCorp, a copper exploration company with assets in Tasmania, which is an island off the coast of Australia. He's not here with us today, though, as your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell nor do anything, really. It's going to be a casual talk between two individuals. It's really just a conversation, one that's general and impersonal in nature, as well as a conversation that, again, will include no financial nor professional advice of any sort. It's definitely not a conversation that you want to use as independent research because it's going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. I also want you to know that CopperCorp is a paying advertiser of the CEO Barbecue channel. So please take the minute to pause the video and read the full warning that is on your screen right now, because the mineral exploration and development industry is among the highest risk industries out there. So if you care about your money and you don't like losing it, please do more research by visiting setter.com and analyzing the company's official filings, as well as consult a professional investment advisor before taking your own decisions in the end. That all said, again, I'm here today for a brief update, as I told you, of CopperCorp. I'm not going to do a full overview as I did last time, but I'm going to link the interview that was about 3 months ago, and I think it's still very much relevant, where we did a deep dive of what this company is and what the plans are. So, I'll make sure to link it somewhere around here. With all that said, Stephen, thank you for investing your time with me, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Antonio.
Pleasure's all mine, of course. I'm looking forward. As I said, it's been about 3 months, and you've had 2 news releases. And but also, more importantly, what caught my attention last time is that you had an $8 million market cap, and you still do. Not much has changed there. But you had a $6 million working capital back then. How much is there left now, and what has that money bought you so far?
We've roughly got about 5 million left. And what we've done is we've done a lot of analysis of old core. Fortunately, this area has been explored, well, I would say intensively in certain areas, and then there's large tracts with nothing in between. So what we've gone back with this new property that we have, Razorback, we've gone through all of the old data, and we've split the core. So we split it into quarters. That's what you tend to do when you go to these core shacks, which are owned by the government. You tend to quarter the core, and we've reanalyzed, particularly for rare earth elements, because when we took this property out, and last time when we spoke 3 months ago, we already had our eye on it and we were already going for it, but we were only just officially granted this license at the end of August. But up until that time, we suspected that, everything was going to go okay. So look, it's the winter season up until now. Now it's the spring in Tasmania. We've been doing a lot of sort of, if you like, background work. We've also been working at this other project called Jasper Hills, which is a little bit different. If you have any maps that can show it, it's a little on the eastern side of IOCG built called AMC, and it's produced some really interesting copper gold numbers from rock sampling. We've done some geophysics there. So in a nutshell, that's really where the money's gone in the last while, and of course the usual filing fees and everything else.
So in a nutshell, the market's standing still, but you're not.
No, absolutely not. We're doing a lot of work. We got 4 geologists in the field. They've already, the weather has just changed in the last month or so, so they've been able to get out into this Razorback property, which I would say, if anybody's been to Scotland, it looks like the lowlands of Scotland. It's kind of low, rolly hills. They've been wandering around looking at where the old drill locations were and looking where all of the old sampling was, because there's a fair amount of sampling in 4 of the areas, but the area is 171 square kilometers, and there are multiple anomalies on here. Now, when we took this property out, and I don't recall if I exactly said this last time, but we went there with the auspices that it was maybe the southern extension of the Mount Lyell copper mine, which is 3 million tons of contained copper and 3 million ounces gold. So it's pretty significant. Even by today's standards, would be significant. And during its day, by the way, it was the largest copper gold mine in the British Empire, and the second largest one was just outside of Vancouver here. So it's significant in its own right. It's still got a 25-year mine life. It's caught up now with an ownership issue. A larger company overtook from New Century. So it's kind of on care and maintenance. However, the geology that we're looking at is not dissimilar from the Mount Lyell deposit. And in fact, what we think is, if you look at it in a cross section, we're slightly deeper, we're more in the porphyry, and more of the epithermal porphyry transition is where Mount Henty is. Now, the closest analogy might be the coastal belt of Chile, Candelaria. So that's 490 odd million tons of material. And of course, we have no idea what we have, but the geology seems to be similar. The amount of copper and gold is a 1-to-1 ratio, which is giving us a good indicator of where we are in the vertical profile. And we just think we're a little deeper. So the nice thing about that area is that's one target, but unknown to us was this rare earth potential to the south. And the more we look at it, we now realize that when they sampled the few drill holes that are in the south, they didn't actually sample for the full suite of rare earth elements. So we've gone back in and sampled the whole lot. And as you know, with the rare earth elements, certain of them are a lot more valuable and if you like, sought after than some of the others. Unfortunately, we have quite a high percentage of those that are sought after. But full disclaimer here, we don't know how it all fits together. We know it's part of the IOCG system, and they often are in IOCGs. I mean, the largest one being Olympic Dam has a lot of rare earth elements in it. But, you know, we're early days here, but the nice thing is we have up to 16% rare earth oxides at surface from sampling over a 3-kilometer square area, which has never been looked at before. So that's going to be the focus of our attention going forward. And I'm going down first week in October, and we're having a kind of a big conference with all of the directors meeting and a conference to decide what sort of budget we're going to have going forward and how we're going to approach it. But bottom line is it's going to be a fairly aggressive drill program come November, we think, Q4 at least anyway. All depends on permitting and availability of rigs. But I'm pretty excited about it. I'd say this is the first time, Antonio, that we have a story together that actually has some appeal both to the retail, and prior to this we were looking at AMC, and that's what we were talking about last time, which is the Alpine deposit. That is one that will appeal to a major. It's a huge district, whereas the Razorback property will become sort of, if you like, a little bit more of interest to some of the retail, because I know that we're going to have some nice rare earth numbers and some nice copper numbers coming out of the drilling.
So you're mentioning the surface sampling results for the rare earth side of the things. Dora 3 also had some nice, surface sampling, but then the results came back recently and they weren't as great. So,
absolutely. No, full disclosure on that. What happened there was that we got in and we had 4 targets, and we had to do helicopter supported drilling, simply because in Tasmania the rule is if you're going into a completely new area that has very little roads or infrastructure there, obviously they don't want you building roads into somewhere that's leading to nowhere. So anyway, we put the drill rig on there, and this was one of the ones that was a higher profile because of the geophysics and some surface geochemistry. And what we think has happened here is, like the nature of exploration, we probably hit the edge of the system. Now, we couldn't get the helicopter to move the drill rig simply because the weather wasn't cooperating, and there was a government contract for that rig that we're using. So our 2-month window ran out, and we could only put 2 drill holes from the same pad, but we had 3 others lined up that we were hoping to go, but you know, Mother Nature just didn't work in our favor for that. So look, it's just one of those fortunate situations where it's a little bit of a teaser. You know, we got 0.18% over a reasonable width, but yeah, we know the copper's there. We know that also that area has potential for rare earths as well, but we didn't prosecute it enough. So we may well go back in and do a little bit more geophysics to try and tighten up on the drill targets, but our main focus is going to be Razorback. I wouldn't say that it was a dud because we've only just scratched the surface. It was more that we may have hit the edge of a larger system. We really don't know at this stage.
Okay. Because last time I also had asked you what project you see the most potential in, and you told me that you didn't know back then because you hadn't seen the results. But now, as you've seen that from Dora, you're certain that Razorback has more potential, I assume.
Well, the difference is that Dora had never been drilled before, so we were the first people to drill it, and we don't know if we drilled in the right spot. What we do know is that there's drill holes already into South Darwin on the Razorback property, and we know it's 30 meters at 2.1% total rare earths, of which 25% of them are magnetic rare earths, which is the high value ones. So I think we're coming from a slightly more advanced state into this drill program with more knowledge, and that's the difference. The two of them are related. In fact, they're only about 8 to 10 kilometers apart as that straight line, and it's all part of the same system. The whole system goes down the sort of eastern side of the Mount Reed volcanics, and there's just deposit after deposit after deposit all the way down here. And Razorback is slightly northwest of Dora, and you come through the same system. So yes, these drill holes were drilled in the 1970s and 80s in Jukes, and then more recently at Razorback. But if you got drill hole data, obviously you're one level of knowledge higher than you are if you're going into an area that's never been drilled before.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. But you're going to be more active over the Northern Hemisphere winter than you were during the Northern Hemisphere summer, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, this western side of Tasmania is fairly rugged terrain. The trees are kind of blown straight over, so the wind's coming straight off the Antarctic. It's not a pleasant. So you tend to. It's a bit like here in northern Canada. You do have a definite field season and non-field season. It's not like working in the States or somewhere where you can work all year round. You can work all year round, but you have to have something very specific in Tasmania you want to be working on, because the conditions can be a little uncomfortable at times. But yeah, so that's going to be our push, is sending all 4 of the geos into the field on Razorback. In fact, one of the geologists that we're using has worked there before in the past, so we're already sort of up on the learning curve a little bit.
But the $5 million you have right now in working capital, that's going to be enough?
Sure. I mean, it would last us more than the year. I mean, it all depends on the size of drill budget that we decide upon, and we haven't decided yet. But obviously, we would still have enough to continue into next year. Yeah, by far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the meanwhile, I suppose you'd be happy to I don't know, find a strategic or someone else, because it's a huge land package they have over there, and keep on raising money at this market cap to keep on exploring this doesn't. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely right. We just spoke about that before we got on the recording there. Look, my previous history was with the majors, and it was in that part of the world. So I'm going down to Australia. I'm staying there a month, and I'm planning to speak to some of my old colleagues, because I do think we have something that could be of interest to them. Similar way that Newmont is in the one you talked about in West Africa, and also Inflection have Anglo Gold Ashanti in Eastern Australia as well. I think this will be of interest. It's just that up until now, I don't feel as if we had a story that was gelled enough to be able to present to them, but I do now. So that's going to be part of my task. That's my job.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. What do they want to see before they could? Because you were with them before. What would you like to see in a junior to go in?
I tell you what they like to see, Antonio. They like to see safe jurisdiction. They want you to have enough ground, and you're talking about that other one. We've got similar. We've got 1,800 square kilometers now. If you're working, in a major group, it's all about size. I remember when I was working with BHP, we took this huge land position in Peru, but we only worked on 10% of it or less. But it's all about the blocking mechanism, if you like, of getting into a large area and then taking the time to analyze the data with the geologists on site. That's what majors like to do. Now, the other thing is Tasmania is a well-established mining area. So in this small part of Tasmania, and I've said this before, there is a huge number of people that work in the mining sector, whether it's exploration or support services, and it is a great deliverer of the percentage of the GDP to the Tasmanian government. So it is important. It's an important industry on this island, and it will get supported. And the other thing that it shouldn't be understated is that it's 100% renewable energy. So that also is of interest to the major companies that are wishing to decarbonize.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is. It's becoming much more of a topic.
On the Alpine property, we actually have the wind farm on the edge of our property. So, and it's the major wind farm for Tasmania, and so that just shows how windy it is up there. But yeah, it's become a huge. They've actually got overcapacity, and so they export the power to the main island now.
Okay. How are things going on at Jasper?
Jasper is actually going extremely well. That's our other project, which keeps delivering. I mean, it's got a base metal aspect to it, and also got a precious copper aspect. And again, full disclosure, we don't fully understand the system, but we're getting up to 10-15% copper and some gold in some of the samples. But we still don't have a really good handle on the potential size. It looks like it might be quite small based on the geophysical signature, but a geophysical signature, the geochemical signature seems to suggest it's a lot larger. So we may well pop a hole into there, or we may well do a little bit more work. As I say, this meeting that we're having in Australia next week will decide this, but it's a pretty low cost project because it's very accessible from one of the bigger roads there, and it's kind of tight in one small area, and it's easy to get around in the bush. So look, we're going to continue working on that with a bunch of rock sample taking, but also we're anxiously awaiting the results of a geophysical survey that we've just done. We got the preliminaries, I've seen them, and I'm waiting for the final report on that. So yes, we're going to continue working on it. Whether it will become something that is going to I'd say that if you're talking about percentage time, it would probably be 10% of 90% spent on Razorback and 10% maybe on Jasper.
And money wise?
Money wise, I mean, we've already submitted a whole bunch of samples for assay, 6-week turnaround. It's just going to be assay costs and one guy in the field. So it's very low budget, that one.
Okay, sure. I was also just thinking, and I'm jumping back to Dora here, but I was thinking about Mount Lyell, and you told me last time that they stopped producing a whole long while ago. It's now under an option or something along those lines. Is that something that might be of interest to you as well to try and get in there?
Tangentially, we have had a look at it, but look, it comes with a little bit of history and not all of it savory. Look, it would be a big chunk for us to take on. I mean, if you're looking at a resource study of that size, trying to bring a mine back into production, it's a whole different sort of kettle of fish. It's almost like two different subjects altogether. Like we're in the exploration game trying to find something that's developing. If we're trying to take an old mine and put it back in production, you need a completely different team with a completely different budget. So no, I don't think it's something that we are actively wanting to take on, but it's certainly something we're keeping a close eye on.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Skyline, AMC, Jasper, I think we went through most of it. Is there what else are we not talking about? I think the last time we talked a little bit about Linda, which is on you know, it's on the Skyline project. And that you told me that that's one target that you were very excited about.
Yeah, we are going to spend a little bit of time there. It's literally on the side of the road. I think we've already gone up there and taken a bunch of samples and sent them for assay. But we will be going back now that the spring's approaching. But it's very easy accessible. It's the old sort of, if you like, the town site for the Mount Lyell mine. So yeah, we'll be going back up there, and it certainly hasn't been explored fully, and it's something that we want to take a look at. But again, Antonio, it's very low cost to do this sort of work. We don't plan on putting a hole into there. There are other targets as well all along that eastern side there, but that one's the one that obviously, due to its vicinity to Mount Lyell, is of most interest to us. Yeah.
Okay, but so again, we talked about all these different projects. Is there some sort of a system approach to it all, or is like the main focus?
We have ranking, yeah.
Okay, so you have rankings, and because I'm just wondering, how do you decide It's a large land package. A whole lot of things are going on. Many different targets, 3 different projects. How do you even decide where to go, where to spend money, as long as you're spending your own money and not, a major's money potentially in the future?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you rank it based on the level of knowledge that you have and the prospectivity. I mean, the geologists on site had their eye on Razorback for over 2 years, even before I became involved in this company. So it was one that we always highly value, but you have to work with what you've got. So we were valuing them based on the knowledge up until there. Like there's a company before had drilled Alpine, and we were based on their data. We were trying to look for the extensions of it. Now we found out in that particular asset, the western side of it is probably faulted off, but at depth we're getting nice intersections of 2% copper. Now to drill a 300-meter plus drill hole gets pretty expensive. So this is a perfect candidate for maybe getting a major involved to take a look at. But in terms of surface exploration, the difficulty you have is trying to preserve capital and also drive the company forward with share price. That tends to be something that you have to have a little bit more excitement on surface numbers with closer to surface intersections of what would be considered ore grade material. So obviously that drives our capital into those projects first. But that's not to say that we're still not doing an analysis on Alpine and all the others. It's more saying that we have to kind of preserve the capital, but also be cognizant that the shareholder wants some return. They want us to actually produce some numbers from something that we've acquired that seems to have better potential than somewhere else. It's just a simple ranking system. That's all based on amount of drill holes, amount of geophysics, and amount of geochemistries that's been done, and the bigger picture. Now, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, rare earths weren't quite as exciting and in the public, conscience as they are now. Obviously, since I spoke to you last, I've done quite a bit of homework on the rare earths. It's an interesting topic. I mean, we're kind of in a difficult rock and a hard place with the China, controlling the market, and the governments have got to decide how they're going to unlock this. So, I think the rare earth space will become quite an interesting topic going forward in terms of exploration. But not all rare earth deposits are the same. That's what I realized. They're all quite different in their makeup, and some have a higher percentage of the more valuable rare earths, and some it's very difficult to actually process the ore. So look, it's rare earths are not so rare, but they're very rare in concentrations that make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think right now that's very topical, because there was news coming out, I believe yesterday, maybe even today, that China has stopped exporting gallium and germanium. And I mean, that's not necessarily related to you or any kind, like it necessarily directly, but what it does show, in my opinion, is that it is the risk of having a production of these things concentrated in one spot, and that particular spot being China as well. So if there's time for rare earths, then it's probably now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, permanent magnet synchronous motors, these are the types of motors that are the most efficient, and everybody's wanting the most efficient engine, and they were in all the EVs. Well, the reliance on China has got to the point when they're now having to try and redesign the engines that were going to sort of charge the change from combustion engine to the EV. Now they're beginning to go back. BMW are doing a hybrid which has got much less rare earths, and there's actually some prototypes of them that don't use them at all. It's this reliance on rare, but unfortunately rare earths now are embedded in almost every part of our motor in terms of it's in all of electrical equipment. It's all in speakers, laptops, you name it, they're already there. But the over-reliance on one country is producing some problems. I mean, we even heard that Malaysia have now stopped their exports as well. So the only other countries that have rare earths in any quantity are USA, Myanmar, and Russia. Well, just look at that group of countries. Some of them are more savory and less savory, I should say. And look, it's not an easy fix. And melt weld, which is their main asset in Australia, is huge, but it has its issues as well. It's a remote location with, a complex processing of the rare earth. So all I'm saying is that the governments are going to have to decide here how they want to unlock this, because with the asset in California, Mountain Pass, being the only one of significance, he was in care and maintenance for 7 years, and suddenly it's come back alive and is of great value to the United States to forward their over reliance on overseas strategic metals. Every country is going to have to do this fairly soon. And, you never know. This project we have at Razorback may actually be able to unlock some of this potential for, sort of diluting down the over-reliance on certain country. We just don't know. It's early days yet. And it all depends on whether these manufacturers of the EV vehicles manage to change the design of the engines to use less rare earths. But regardless of that, rare earths are used in so many different types of engine magnets, speakers, you name it, they're in it, that you can't really do without them. But you don't want to be beholden to one country for the production, or else kind of going backwards a little bit.
It's true. Oh, it's absolutely true. Okay, so you have interesting things coming up. Going off your recent presentation, just to sort of recap as to what we talked about. Up on the AMC project, Q4 is actually probably the time when metallurgical results are going to start dropping from the AMC, or I assume early next year.
Yeah, we've put some samples in for Davis tube bottle roll test, which is the test that you do for iron ore as well, because we think we might have a credit from iron ore in there. So yeah, that's what I was talking about before, and we're in the process of doing some testing. But to do an involved test is extremely expensive, Antonio. It's about $100,000, and so we're weighing up whether it's, if it's something we really want to do right now. So we're still just doing the basic testing of the recoverability of magnetite from the copper ore.
Right. And Skyline, you say on your presentation, regional exploration, we talked a little bit about that too. That you're going to be doing in Q4, and then now that you've gotten the Razorback permit, you're going to be you're planning the program now as we speak, and then when you get down there, next week is actually Q4. No, actually in 2 weeks, but in the first week of October is when you're getting down there, and so Q4, that's when you start Jukes and Darwin rock sampling, because you have the permit now. Okay. It's looking up, and then in the meanwhile, you're looking to get a strategic in. It's looking good. What about sentiment? How are you? Sentiment is pretty bad. Everybody knows that. But how are you experiencing it specifically to your company when people call you up, when you talk to investors? How do they feel in terms of sentiment towards CopperCorp specifically?
I would say there's a certain amount of ambivalence to some extent. We have not put out a lot of news releases, but we've been, if you like, we've been commented very favorably about the quality of the news releases we put out. We've been very specific about that. So if there's one criticism of us, is that we've been very slow on the news output. So we're going to be increasing that because of the seasonality of the work that we do. It tends to be a little bit like that. But in terms of sentiment, we've actually been applauded for actually being able to maintain the capital, which I can tell you a year ago it was not the case. And if there was one sentiment, it's thank God you've got $5 million in the bank.